Grace Evelyn Carter learned to wake before the alarm, because poverty had a way of putting its hand over your mouth before dawn and whispering that sleep was something for people who had already paid their bills. At 4:23 every morning, 3 minutes before the cracked phone on the kitchen counter began to buzz, her eyes opened in the dark of apartment 3B, and for a few seconds she lay perfectly still beneath the thin blanket, listening. The radiator hissed in the corner like an old woman, trying to breathe through bad lungs. Rain tapped at the kitchen window, soft but steady. The kind of winter rain that seemed colder than snow because it soaked into everything and left no beauty behind. Somewhere beneath the floor, Mrs. Diane Miller's television murmured with early news. Somewhere outside, a bus sighed at the curb and pulled away, carrying people who looked as tired as Grace felt. In the bedroom to her left, Lily and Ben slept in the bunk bed they had outgrown emotionally before physically. Lily curled around a stuffed rabbit missing one eye. Ben wrapped in Noah's old hoodie because he said it smelled like home. Though Grace's new home had started to smell more like detergent, fried oil, unpaid fear, and the inside of buses than anything a child should love. On the couch in the living room, her oldest son, Noah James Carter, lay turned toward the wall, one arm tucked under his head, his black hoodie pulled up around his neck, his school backpack on the floor beside him like a closed mouth. He was 17, almost 18, tall enough now that his feet hung over the arm of the couch. But to Grace, there were still moments when she saw the boy who once stood outside his first-grade classroom with both fists in her coat, refusing to let go until she promised she would be waiting right there when school ended. She had kept that picture in a plastic sleeve inside her dresser drawer, the corners worn soft from being touched on days. She needed proof that time had not always been cruel. That morning, Noah's face looked older in the blue shadow before dawn. There were faint bruises beneath his eyes, a scratch near his wrist, and a stillness in him Grace could not read anymore. He had been coming home late. He had been answering questions with half sentences. His phone lit up at strange hours, and when Grace asked who was texting, he said, "Nobody," in the flat tone teenagers used when they wanted adults to know a door had been locked. She told herself it was school pressure. Senior year, college applications, maybe shame because they were poor. But another voice, meaner and more frightened, whispered that she had already lost one man in this family to lies, debt, and closed doors. And maybe she was watching the beginning of losing another. She hated herself for thinking it. She hated Noah for making her think it. Then she hated herself again because a mother was not supposed to look at her son and see the outline of his father. She got up quietly, folding her blanket before her feet touched the floor because habits of control mattered when life itself would not obey. The kitchen light flickered when she turned it on. The apartment came into view in pieces. The peeling corner of the linoleum, the dented table, the stack of overdue notices under a magnet shaped like a strawberry. The 3 envelopes labeled in her careful handwriting, rent, power, BRIGGS. The BRIGGS envelope was the thinnest and the heaviest at the same time. Mr. Colin Briggs did not shout when he came to collect. That was what made him worse. Men who shouted could be dismissed as cruel. Briggs spoke softly, like a banker, like a pastor, like a man who had never dirtied his hands but understood exactly where to place pressure so another person would bend. The debt was Victor's in origin, but Grace's in consequence. Victor Carter, her ex-husband, had begun as a charming man with rough hands and a laugh loud enough to make small rooms feel like parties. He laid tile, told jokes, danced with Lily when she was a baby, and promised Noah that one day they would buy a house with a garage big enough for bicycles and tools. Then came a fall at a construction site. Pain pills, gambling apps, cash advances, private loans, signatures Grace had trusted because love, at its most foolish, sometimes looked like handing someone a pen. By the time Victor disappeared, he had left behind a cracked phone, a closet full of work boots, children who still asked where he was, and debt that wore Grace's name like a legal skin. She could have fought some of it. People told her so, but fighting required money, time, childcare, court dates, documents, stamina, and a kind of faith that systems cared about the difference between guilt and liability. Grace had none of those things. What she had were 3 children, a lease, and a body that could still move if she did not stop moving long enough to feel it breaking. She made breakfast in the half-dark, 3 eggs, though she wanted to save one, toast from the end of the loaf, oatmeal stretched with water, so Ben would think it was more than it was. She placed the least burnt toast on Noah's plate, the middle pieces for Lily and Ben, and the blackened edge on a napkin for herself. She poured the last of the milk into Ben's cup, then rinsed the carton and added water to make it look less empty in the fridge. A ridiculous little lie she performed for no audience except her own fear. When she bent to pull her work shoes from under the chair, she paused. The split near the toe, the one she had meant to tape again, had been sealed with a piece of black adhesive stronger than anything she owned. The edge was smoothed carefully, pressed flat by fingers more patient than hers had time to be. Beside the shoes lay 2 pain patches, still in their drugstore wrap. Grace stared at them. For one brief, dangerous second, warmth rose in her chest. Then she pushed it away because tenderness, too early in the morning, could make her late. Maybe Lily had found them in a drawer. Maybe she herself had bought them and forgot. She was forgetting things now. She forgot where she put coins. She forgot to eat. She forgot words in the middle of sentences. She forgot, sometimes, that her children were not just mouths to feed, but people watching her vanish one exhausted inch at a time. Noah shifted on the couch. Grace froze. His eyes were open. For a moment they looked at each other across the dim living room. Mother in a faded harbor light in housekeeping uniform. Son under a borrowed darkness that made him seem far away. "Go back to sleep," she whispered. "You've got school." He blinked slowly. "You've got work." "I always have work." "That's not a joke." She almost smiled, but he said it too quietly, and the quiet carried accusation or maybe concern. She could not tell any more. "There's breakfast. Make sure Lily brushes her hair before school. And Ben needs his permission slip signed." "It's on the fridge." Noah sat up. "I can take them." "You have class." "I know. Then be in it." The words came out sharper than she intended. Noah's face closed. It was a small movement, the muscles around his mouth tightening, his eyes dropping to the floor, but it landed in Grace like a door shutting. She wanted to take it back. She wanted to say, "I am scared, baby. I am so scared that if I stop watching you for 1 second, this world will swallow you too." Instead, she grabbed her bag, tucked the BRIGGS envelope deeper into the side pocket, and left before the guilt could make her weak. In the hallway, the smell of old carpet and somebody's fried onions clung to the air. Diane Miller's door opened just as Grace passed. Diane wore a robe and slippers, hair pinned up, face arranged into concern with too much satisfaction beneath. "Another early one, Grace." "Morning, Diane." "I heard Noah come in late again." Grace stopped. "Did you?" "Walls are thin. I only say it because boys that age, if you don't keep them close, they find other people to listen to." Grace felt her fingers tighten around her bag strap. "My son is fine." Diane smiled sadly. "I'm sure. It's just hard, raising children alone. They need a firm hand." Grace looked at the woman's clean slippers, the warm light behind her, the mug in her hand. "They also need breakfast." "Excuse me." She walked down the stairs with her jaw clenched, hating that Diane had said nothing she was not already afraid of. The day unfolded the way Grace's days always unfolded, in rooms other people dirtied and left behind. At Harbor Light Inn, the hallway carpet smelled of damp wool and industrial cleaner. The guests who stayed there were not rich, not truly, but even modest comfort could make people cruel to those paid to clean it. Grace stripped beds, lifted mattresses with a back that had begun to pulse with pain before 8 o'clock, scrubbed toothpaste from sinks, collected towels from bathroom floors, and trained herself not to look too long at the half-eaten food guests abandoned because hunger made waste feel personal. Tanya Reed, the housekeeping manager, moved through the corridor with a tablet in hand, her hair pulled into a tight bun, and her voice sharpened by the small power of scheduling other people's survival. "Grace, you're behind on 212 and 216. I had to redo 208. The shower curtain was torn. Then move faster. I'm moving." Tanya looked at her. "Everyone is moving. That's why it's called work." Grace swallowed. She needed the hours. She needed the job. She needed not to be a woman who argued with the person who could cut her Friday shift. In room 214, a businessman in a navy coat stood by the bed even though checkout had passed, talking into his phone while Grace waited with her cart. He glanced at her as if she were furniture delivered too early. "Can you come back?" he asked, not covering the phone. "I'm on a call." "Yes, sir," Grace said. Tanya appeared behind her. "This room has to be turned in 20 minutes. The man rolled his eyes. "This place smells like cheap bleach anyway." He said it to the phone, but also to Grace, because humiliation worked best when it pretended to be incidental. Tanya smiled at him. "We'll take care of it, sir." Then in the hallway, she turned to Grace. "Apologize faster next time. Guests don't want excuses." "I didn't give one." "Your face did." By noon, Grace's hands smelled of bleach no matter how many times she rinsed them. During her 10-minute break, she stood in the linen closet, pressing one of the pain patches onto her lower back with shaking fingers. She thought of the patch beside her shoes that morning and felt something twist in her. Noah. It had to be Noah. He had noticed. The boy who barely answered her had noticed. Then her phone buzzed. A missed call from Riverton Falls High School. Her stomach dropped so hard, she had to put a hand against the shelf. She called back, but the line rang, transferred, rang again. Before anyone answered, Tanya opened the closet door. "Break's over." Grace lowered the phone. "It's the school, and I have 6 rooms waiting. It might be about my son." Tanya's face did not change. "Everybody has a son, a mother, a headache, a tragedy. If we stopped for all of them, nobody would get paid." Grace returned to work. For the rest of the afternoon, the missed call sat in her pocket like a stone. At 3, she changed in the employee bathroom into the black shirt and apron for Maggie's Spoon Diner, washed her face with cold water, and took the bus across town. The diner sat near the old bridge, a narrow place with red stools, cracked menus, a bell over the door, and regulars who argued about football as if argument were a form of prayer. Maggie, the owner, had kind eyes and a bad knee, but kindness did not erase the arithmetic of a small business. Grace served coffee, carried plates, wiped tables, smiled when men called her sweetheart in tones that were not sweet, and checked her phone whenever she could. Noah had not answered her texts. Lily finally called at 4:40. "Mom, baby, are you home?" "Yeah. I walked with Ben." Grace's hand went cold around the coffee pot. "Where's Noah? He wasn't there." "What do you mean he wasn't there?" "He texted that he had to stay after." "Stay after where?" "I don't know. He said school." Ben's voice came faintly in the background. "Is Noah in trouble?" Grace closed her eyes. A customer at table 6 raised a hand for more coffee. Maggie called from the kitchen, "Grace, order up." Grace forced her voice steady. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone. I'll call Mrs. Miller to check on you." "Mom, Noah said he'd be back." "Lock the door, Lily." She hung up and spilled coffee onto her own wrist because her hands were shaking. The burn was small, but it flashed bright enough to bring tears to her eyes. Table 6 complained that his eggs were cold. Maggie gave her a look, not unkind but tired. Everything in Grace's life was tired. Noah came home at 8:52 that night, soaked from rain, face pale, backpack heavy on one shoulder. Grace had made it home 10 minutes before him, still in her diner shirt, smelling of grease and coffee, with Ben asleep at the table over a coloring page and Lily pretending not to watch the door. The dinner Grace had reheated. Soup from Maggie's and rice from the night before sat cooling in bowl. Noah stepped inside quietly, as if quietness could make lateness smaller. Grace stood. "Where were you?" "Library." "Don't." He looked at her then, exhausted enough to be careless. "Don't what?" "Don't say it like I'm stupid." Lily gathered Ben's crayons with quick, nervous hands. Noah saw, softened for half a second, then hardened again. "I had stuff to finish. The school called." Something moved across his face. Fear quickly buried. "What did they say?" "I don't know, Noah, because I was cleaning rooms and serving tables and trying to make enough money so we still have a door for you to walk through whenever you feel like coming home." "Mom?" "No. You were supposed to pick up your brother and sister." "I texted Lily. She is 9. "I know. Do you?" He flinched. Grace hurt herself and could not stop. "You come home late. You don't answer calls. You hide your phone. The school calls. And I'm supposed to just believe everything is fine because you say library." Noah's jaw tight. "I'm handling it." That sentence, calm and tired, broke something open in her. "Handling what?" "You're 17. Your job is school." "I know what my job is." "Then act like it." He looked at her, and for one terrible second she saw not indifference but hurt so deep it made him seem younger. "You think I don't care? I think I don't know what you care about anymore." The room went silent. Lily looked down. Ben woke enough to whisper, "Are you mad at Noah?" Grace's throat closed. Noah set his backpack down slowly. "I'm not hungry." "I saved you soup. Give it to Ben tomorrow." "Noah." "I said I'm not hungry." He went to the bathroom, closed the door, and Grace stood in the kitchen with all the words she had thrown and no way to gather them back. Later, after Lily and Ben were in bed and Grace had fallen asleep sitting upright on the couch, Noah came out. He stood over her for a long time. The lines in her face looked deeper in sleep. Her hands were curled inward, as if still holding trays. He picked up the empty bowl she had never eaten from, washed it without sound, then sat at the table with Lily's homework. He corrected spelling words in the margin, packed Ben's permission slip, opened his own laptop with the cracked hinge, and logged into an online lecture at 12:43 a.m. At 2:10, he opened an essay draft titled Bright Future Scholar's Personal Statement. The first line read, "My mother's hands taught me what love costs before I understood money." He stared at it until the words blurred, then kept typing. The first time Colin Briggs came to the apartment in front of the children, he knocked like a neighbor borrowing sugar. 3 polite taps. Grace was serving dinner, a rare meal where all 4 Carters were at the table at the same time. Scrambled eggs, toast, canned peaches divided carefully so Ben got the most syrup. For 15 minutes, the apartment had almost felt like a home instead of a place under siege. Noah was helping Lily with fractions. Ben was telling a story about a boy in his class who ate glue. Grace had even laughed, a real laugh that surprised her. Then came the knock. She knew before she opened it. Fear had a sound. Briggs stood in the hallway wearing a dark wool coat and leather gloves, rain shining on his shoulders. He was in his late 40s, clean-shaven, with gentle eyes that never warmed. "Grace," he said, as if they were old friends. "Bad time. I mailed what I had. You mailed less than agreed." His voice remained soft. That was his talent, softness that forced people to lean in, making the threat feel intimate. Grace stepped into the hall and pulled the door partly closed, but Ben had already seen him. "Who's that?" Briggs smiled past Grace. "You must be Ben." Grace's body went rigid. "Don't talk to my children. I'm only being polite." Noah was behind her now. She felt him before she saw him, tall and tense, placing himself between the doorway and the table. Briggs looked at him with mild interest. "Noah, right? Senior year. Big year." Noah did not answer. Briggs removed a folded paper from his coat and handed it to Grace. "Updated balance. I included the late fee. I wish I didn't have to." "Then don't." "Grace," he sighed as if she had disappointed him. "Your ex-husband made choices. I understand that, but obligations don't disappear because the person who made them lacks character. Children need stability. A mother knows that." He glanced again into the apartment, where Lily held Ben's hand under the table. Eviction would be ugly for them. Grace's shame rose like bile. "I said I'll pay, and I believe you want to." That was worse than calling her a liar. It made failure sound like a personal weakness, dressed in good intention. Noah reached for the paper. Grace pulled it back. "No, Mom, go sit down." Briggs smiled slightly. "It's good for boys to understand responsibility." Noah's voice was low. "I understand enough." Grace turned on him, fear becoming anger because fear needed somewhere to go. "No, you don't. Your responsibility is school. Mine is this." Noah's eyes flashed. "Maybe it shouldn't just be yours. Do not talk like you're grown when you can't even come home on time." The instant she said it, she saw it land. Noah stepped back, not physically far, but somewhere inside. Briggs watched it happen with the faint satisfaction of a man who enjoyed turning families against themselves without lifting his hand. After he left, Grace folded the paper and hid it in the drawer beneath old takeout menus. That night, after everyone slept, Noah opened the drawer, took a picture of the balance, wrote the number in a small notebook, and searched warehouse night shifts on his phone until his eyes burned. By February, Grace's life and Noah's life ran beside each other like 2 trains in the dark, close enough to hear but never touching. She scrubbed bathtubs at Harbor Light while he slept through first period study hall with a calculus book open under his arm. She poured coffee at Maggie's while he lifted boxes in the back of a distribution warehouse that smelled of cardboard dust and machine oil. She emptied office trash at Brightline while he sorted laundry at Alvarez Wash and folded under fluorescent lights that made his skin look gray. When Grace thought he was at the library, Noah was learning the logic of exhaustion, how to wrap tape around cracked fingers before they bled onto other people's sheets, how to drink water to quiet hunger without making himself sick, how to read scholarship essays during a 15-minute break while grown men joked that kids these days hot. Diet easy. Mrs. Alvarez, who owned the laundromat, gave him sandwiches sometimes and pretended they were extras. "Your mother know you're here?" she asked the first week. "No, she should. She'll stop me." "Maybe she should." Noah looked down at the folding table where he had spread a textbook between piles of towels. "Then she'll work until she drops." Mrs. Alvarez studied him. "Children shouldn't have to save their parents." "I'm not saving her." "Then what are you doing?" He folded a towel with careful edges. "Trying to keep her alive long enough to see me leave for college." Mrs. Alvarez said nothing after that. She paid him fairly, let him study when machines were running, And once, when she saw him limping, left a bottle of ibuprofen beside his backpack without comment. Noah kept records of every dollar. Some went to lunch accounts for Lily and Ben. Some went toward utilities. Some went anonymously to Briggs through small transfers that would not raise too many questions at once. Some he hid in an envelope labeled Mom's Shoes, though every time he had almost enough. Another emergency ate. He told himself he was still a student. He was still applying. He was still the son his mother had worked for. At 2 in the morning, when his hands shook over his laptop and the words of his essay swam in front of him, he took out the piece of paper he kept in his wallet, a scrap torn from an old grocery list where Grace had once written, "Only thing that matters is you keep studying. I can take anything if you keep going." He had folded and unfolded it so many times, the crease was nearly transparent. "I am still going," he whispered into the laundromat's humming emptiness. "I promise." Grace was called to Riverton Falls High on a Thursday that smelled like wet leaves and bleach. Tanya docked her 2 hours for leaving Harbor Light early and made sure to say, "I hope whatever teenage drama this is turns out to be worth it." Grace rode the bus to the school with her housekeeping uniform still on, hair pulled back, hands raw, shoes damp. The building sat on a low hill, all brick and glass, bright hallways filled with students who looked impossibly clean. In the main office, she sat across from Mrs. Helen Whitcomb, a counselor in her 60s with silver hair and a face that could be stern until one noticed the tired kindness around her eye. A wall behind her displayed photos of scholarship recipients from past years, smiling teenagers in caps and gowns, parents beside them holding flowers. Grace could not stop looking at them. "Mrs. Carter, Mrs. Whitcomb said, Noah is one of the brightest students in this class." Grace's shoulders dropped a little. Then the counselor continued, "But he's been absent from several morning sessions, and when he is present, he is exhausted. He recently adjusted part of his schedule into flexible study blocks, which can work for students with special circumstances, but it requires communication. If this continues without proper support, it could affect certain opportunities." "What opportunities?" Grace asked. Mrs. Whitcomb's hand rested on a folder turned face down. "Academic opportunities." Grace heard danger, not hope. "Is he failing?" "No." "Is he skipping?" "Not exactly." "What does that mean?" Mrs. Whitcomb leaned forward. "It means Noah is carrying more than most adults I know. I need you to talk to him, but not as if he is a problem to solve. He is not irresponsible." Grace's shame reacted before her understanding could. "With respect, I am his mother. I work 3 jobs so he can sit in classrooms like this, and now I'm being told he may lose chances because he can't show up." Mrs. Whitcomb looked at her for a long moment. "I'm telling you your son needs help." Grace stood too quickly. "So do we all." She regretted it immediately, but she was already crying, and she refused to cry in that office under the photographs of other people's possible futures. In the bathroom down the hall, she gripped the sink until the room stopped moving. A girl came in, saw her uniform, and looked away quickly, embarrassed for both of them. Grace washed her face and returned to work at Maggie's Spoon, where a customer complained she looked half asleep and tipped 37 cents. That night, the fight with Noah tore through the apartment, with the quiet violence of people trying not to wake younger children. Grace waited at the kitchen table with the school paper in front of her, and dinner gone cold. Noah came in after 9, face hollow, right hand bandaged beneath his sleeve. "Sit down," she said. He looked at the paper and closed his eyes for half a second. "Mom, not tonight." "Tonight, I'm tired." "So am I," he sat. "The school called me in. Mrs. Whitcomb says you're missing classes." "I'm not missing them. I'm making them up." "Making them up when?" "Between lying and disappearing." His head snapped up. "I'm not lying. You say library when you're not at the library." "Sometimes I am." "That is not an answer." He laughed once bitterly, and it sounded too adult. "You want answers, or you want something you can punish." Grace recoiled. "Do not speak to me like that. Then stop looking at me like I'm him." The apartment went still. They both knew who him meant. Victor sat between them, though he had not set foot there in over a year. Grace's face drained. "That is not fair." Noah's voice shook now. "No. What's not fair is you thinking every quiet thing in me is something rotten. Because you give me nothing else. Maybe because every time I try, you tell me my only job is school, like I don't live in this house too. Your only job is school. And yours is what? Dying slowly so we can pretend I'm still a kid." Grace stood so fast the chair scraped back. Lily appeared in the hallway, Ben behind her, both pale. Grace saw them and felt horror at herself, but she could not stop. "I have given everything so you would not have to live like this." Noah stood too. "And I'm trying to make sure you don't die doing it." You are 17. I know. Then stop acting like you can fix what adults broke. His eyes filled, but he held the tears back with a force that made his face almost frightening. Somebody has to. Grace slapped her palm on the table. Not at him, never at him. But the sound cracked through the apartment. Ben began to cry. Noah looked toward his little brother, and his anger collapsed into pain. He picked up his backpack. Grace heard herself say, "If you walk out that door now, don't expect me to believe you easily again." Noah paused with his hand on the knob. For one moment, she thought he would turn around, tell her everything, fall into her arms like the boy in the first-grade picture. Instead, he said, "You already don't," and left. Outside, under the wet streetlight, Noah stopped beside the stairwell, pressed both hands to his face, and cried without sound. Then he wiped his eyes with his sleeve and rode his bike to Alvarez Wash and Fold, because the dryers did not care that his heart was breaking. Grace collapsed 2 nights later in the women's restroom of a downtown insurance office while mopping around the sinks. It was her 3rd job of the day, and she had not eaten since noon because the sandwich Maggie gave her had gone into Ben's lunchbox after he said the cafeteria pizza made his stomach hurt. The office building after hours had a dead, expensive silence, all glass doors, framed mission statements, and carpet so clean it made Grace feel dirty. She had emptied trash bins full of untouched catered food, scrubbed coffee rings from desks where people earned in an hour what she earned in a shift, and tried not to think about Briggs's latest message. Friday. No more partials. At 11:38, the floor tilted. She gripped the mop handle, took one step, and went down hard, her shoulder hitting the tile. For a while, there was only the buzz of fluorescent lights and the smell of disinfectant. When she opened her eyes, the night security guard was kneeling beside her, saying her name badly because he had read it from her bag. "Ma'am, Grace, you with me?" Her first words were, "Am I fired?" He looked startled. "What? Please don't call my manager. I just need a minute." But he had already called the emergency contact listed on the old form, the home number no one answered. Then Lily's phone because Grace had added it for school pickups. Lily called Noah. Noah arrived drenched, breathless, still wearing the dark polo from the laundromat under his coat. Grace saw him and wanted to disappear. There are humiliations a mother can survive in front of strangers that become unbearable in front of her child. "Why are you here?" she whispered. Lily called. "You should be home. You were on a bathroom floor." The cleaning supervisor arrived, irritated more than concerned. "We need incident paperwork. Also, Grace, if you can't complete night shifts, we'll have to review your assignment." Noah turned toward her with a look Grace had never seen on his face. Not teenage anger, something colder. "She passed out cleaning your offices, and that's what you say." The woman blinked. "Excuse me." Grace grabbed his wrist. "Noah, don't." He looked down at her hand, then at the bandage on his own wrist she had not yet noticed. His anger folded back into silence. Later, on the bus home, because neither of them could afford a cab, Grace leaned her head against the window and murmured, half asleep, "I just need you to keep studying. I can take anything if you keep going." Noah sat beside her, staring straight ahead, one hand in his pocket around the folded scrap of the same word. "I am," he whispered, but she was asleep before she heard. When Grace discovered the debt had gone down more than it should have, her first feeling was not relief. It was fear. Briggs met her at a coffee shop because he said public places were more comfortable, though Grace understood he chose them because shame behaved better under witnesses. He slid the updated balance across the table. Grace checked it twice. "This isn't right." "It is. I didn't pay this much." Briggs stirred his coffee slowly. "Money came in. From who? Does it matter?" "Yes," he smiled. "Grace, in my experience, mothers with teenagers should ask where money comes from before they spend it." The words entered her bloodstream like poison. She went home and did something she had sworn never to do. She searched Noah's backpack. At first, she found normal things: notebooks, a calculator, pens, a granola bar flattened almost beyond recognition. Then, inside the lining near the back seam, her fingers touched paper. A torn receipt. Only part of the header remained. Alvarez Wash and Fold Payroll. Beneath it, numbers, hours, net pay. Grace sat on the floor, the backpack open in front of her, and felt the apartment shrink around her. Noah came in before she could put it back. He stood in the doorway, saw the bag, saw the receipt in her hand, and went very still. "You went through my stuff." Grace rose slowly. "Are you working, Mom? Are you?" He looked away. Sometimes, it's not what you think. Then tell me what to think." He said nothing. That silence was gasoline. "Is this where the debt money is coming from?" "I can explain." "Then explain." Not like this. There is no good version of this, his voice cracked. You don't even know what this is. I know my son is hiding paychecks in his school bag while his counselor tells me he's missing classes. Noah's face tight. I'm not missing my future. You don't get to decide that at 17. Apparently, I don't get to decide anything, not even whether I help. If that money comes from somewhere that takes you away from school, I don't want it. You'd rather Briggs keep coming here? I'd rather lose this apartment than lose you. Noah stared at her. You say that now? Grace flinched. What does that mean? It means every time the bills come, you stop being my mother and become a wall I can't get through. The words hurt because they were not entirely false. He saw that she had heard them. He looked ashamed immediately, but shame did not undo the sentence. He took the receipt from her hand, put it in his bag, and went to his room. That night, Grace lay awake listening to Lily breathe and Ben murmur in his sleep. From the living room came the faint click of Noah typing. She wanted to go to him. Instead, she stayed still, because apology required a strength she had already spent. The truth began to break fully on a rain-heavy Tuesday near midnight. Grace had taken an extra laundry delivery from Maggie, who sometimes paid her cash to drop off tablecloths at Alvarez Wash and fold after closing. She went because cash was cash, and because being outside in rain felt no worse than being inside with her thoughts. The laundromat windows glowed white against the dark street. Machines turned inside, silver mouths revolving, clothes tumbling behind glass. Grace saw a young man lifting a bag of wet linens from a cart, shoulders hunched, one wrist wrapped, dark hair falling over his forehead. For half a second, her mind refused the image. Then he turned. Noah. He wore a navy apron with a name tag. Noah. The letters were small, ordinary, devastating. Grace stood outside with rain running down her face, watching her son, the boy she had told to focus only on school, drag someone else's laundry across a tile floor at midnight. He moved with the careful economy of a body that had learned not to waste energy. On a folding table near him lay an open textbook, a notebook full of equations, and a laptop displaying what looked like an essay. Mrs. Alvarez said something to him. Noah smiled faintly, tired but gentle, and the expression pierced Grace because she had not seen him smile at home in weeks. She opened the door. The bell rang. Noah looked up. All color left his face. Mom machines hummed. Rain struck the windows. Mrs. Alvarez turned and closed her mouth. Grace walked in slowly, eyes fixed on the apron, the bandage, the textbook, the exhaustion he had hidden inside silence. How long? Noah swallowed. Mom, how long? Mrs. Alvarez spoke softly. Grace, he's a good boy. Grace did not look at her. How long? Noah's eyes dropped. 3 months, 3 months. 90 days of lies. 90 days of him coming home pale and saying library. 90 days of her accusing him while he folded sheets under fluorescent light. The room tilted the way the office restroom had tilted before she fell. You quit school? No, don't lie. I didn't quit. You're here. I'm also in school. At midnight, you're in a laundromat. Because at midnight the little kids are asleep and you're at work and nobody needs me home. Grace stepped back as if struck. Nobody needs you? Noah's eyes filled. That's not what I meant. Do you understand what you've done? Yes. No, you don't. You think this is noble because you're too young to understand what it costs to give up pieces of yourself. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're giving up pieces of yourself every day. I am the mother, and I am your son, not a chair in the corner watching you collapse. Mrs. Alvarez looked away. Grace's voice broke. You were supposed to have more than me. Noah took a step toward her. That's what I'm trying to do. By becoming me, he stopped. That one hurt him. She saw it and hated herself, but the pain had become too large to hold gently. She walked out before he could answer. In the rain under the awning, Noah followed. Mom, please. Grace turned. Did you do this because of Briggs? Silence. Did you pay him? Some. She covered her mouth. Oh God, I didn't steal. I didn't do anything bad. You are 17 years old and paying your father's debt. He left it on you. That doesn't make it yours. It landed in our house. That makes it mine too. Grace shook her head, tears mixing with rain. I thought I was saving your future. Noah's voice dropped. Maybe I was trying to save yours. They stood there, mother and son, under a laundromat awning at midnight, both soaked, both right, both wrong, both too tired to know what love should sound like when it was not wearing the costume of sacrifice. The next day, Grace opened Noah's backpack again, not with anger this time, but with a terror so deep it felt like prayer. He was in the shower. She told herself she only needed proof, only needed to understand. Inside, she found everything: a folded warehouse schedule, a second pay stub, a list in Noah's handwriting. Briggs, electric, Lily field trip, Ben lunch, mom shoes. A bottle of pain medicine, bandages, flashcards, a printed copy of his bright future scholarship essay. The first page wrinkled from being read too often. At the bottom of the bag, wrapped in a plastic sleeve, was the picture of Grace walking Noah into first grade. She sat on the floor with the backpack between her knees and read his essay. He had written about her hands, not her suffering in broad, dramatic language, but her hands specifically. The way they smelled of bleach and coffee, the way they cracked in winter, the way they cut the biggest piece of chicken and placed it on someone else's plate, the way they shook when she opened bills but became steady when tying Ben's shoes, the way they hid pain, patches under sleeves, the way they had held his backpack on the first day of school and let go only after he promised to walk through the door. Grace pressed the paper to her mouth. Lily appeared in the hallway. Mom, Grace tried to speak, failed. Lily looked at the open bag. Is Noah in trouble? Grace pulled her daughter close. I don't know how to be his mother right now, she whispered, and the honesty frightened both of them. Noah came out and saw them. He saw the papers. His face did not show anger first. It showed defeat. You read it. Grace looked up. I thought I had ruined you. You didn't. Look at this. She lifted the schedule. Look at what you've been doing. I know what I've been doing. No, you don't. You're a child. His expression hardened. Stop saying that when you need me to be more than one. Grace recoiled because, again, truth had arrived wearing cruelty. Noah immediately looked sick with regret. Mom, I didn't mean. Yes, she said quietly. You did. The phone rang before either could say more. Riverton Falls High. Grace answered with shaking hands. Mrs. Whitcomb asked if she and Noah could come in that afternoon. It's important, she said. Grace looked at Noah. His eyes went to the jacket hanging by the door, where something bulky sat in the inner pocket. We'll be there, Grace said, and felt as if she were walking toward a sentence. At the school, the hallway lights seemed too bright. Grace sat in Mrs. Whitcomb's office with Noah beside her, both of them carrying sleeplessness like visible bruises. The counselor placed a folder on the desk. Noah has been a finalist for the Bright Future Scholars Program. Grace heard the word finalist as if underwater. Has been, Mrs. Whitcomb looked at Noah, then back at Grace. The committee had concerns about his attendance pattern and workload. I also had concerns, not about his character, about his survival. Grace turned to Noah. You applied, he nodded. When, months ago? You didn't tell me. I wanted to wait. For what? He did not answer. Mrs. Whitcomb continued. He completed the academic requirements. He made up the sessions he missed. His teachers submitted additional evaluation. His essay was one of the strongest we have seen. Grace began to cry silently. I'm sorry, she said, not sure to whom. I'm so sorry. I thought you were throwing it away. I thought I worked so hard and still failed you. Noah's hand moved toward his pocket. Grace kept talking because guilt had become a flood. You have to quit the jobs, all of them. If we lose the apartment, we lose it. If Briggs comes, he comes. But I cannot watch you bury your life under mine. Noah took out a thick white envelope and placed it on the desk between them. His fingers trembled. Open it, Grace stared at it. The return address read Bright Future Scholars Program. For a moment, she could not touch it. Noah slid it closer. Please, Mom. She opened it clumsily, tearing the top unevenly. The letter inside was printed on heavy paper. Dear Noah James Carter, congratulations. Full tuition, housing, books, meal plan, living stipend, renewable for 4 years. Grace read the first line, then the second, then started over because the words refused to stay in meaning. Full scholarship, Mrs. Whitcomb said softly, because sometimes joy needed translation. Grace looked at Noah. He was crying now, not loudly, not like a child, but with tears sliding down a face that had learned too early to stay composed. I didn't quit, he said. I was scared you would think I did. I was scared you'd make me stop working before I could help enough. I wanted to keep the house until I could leave without feeling like I abandoned you. Grace made a sound that was almost pain. Noah, I know I lied. I know I hurt you, but I kept studying. I kept hearing you say, if I kept going, you could take anything. I didn't want you to have to take everything. He reached into the envelope and pulled out a folded page, handwritten. This was supposed to be for your birthday. Grace opened it. Mom, I know you think I don't see you. I see everything. I see the way you give Ben the last milk. I see you limping before work. I see you count money and then smile like we're not in trouble. I know you wanted me to have a childhood longer than this. I'm sorry I couldn't stay little, but I didn't grow up because you failed. I grew up because you taught me love is something you do even when nobody claps. This scholarship has my name on it, but every sentence that got me here came from you. Grace bent forward over the letter, as if her body could no longer hold itself upright. Noah stood, came around the desk, and knelt beside her chair. She grabbed him, pulling him to her with a desperation that startled them both. "I'm sorry," she said into his hair. "I'm sorry I didn't see you." Noah's voice broke against her shoulder. "I'm sorry I made you look alone, Mrs. Whitcomb." Turned toward the window. Outside, students crossed the courtyard under gray light, carrying backpacks, laughing, unaware that in one small office, a mother and son had just found each other inside the wreckage of every secret they had kept to protect one another. But revelation did not fix the heat. It did not pay all the debt. It did not return the sleep Noah had lost, or the years Grace had spent training herself to suffer in silence. The weeks after the scholarship were not clean. Grace made Noah quit the warehouse immediately and cut Alvarez to one evening a week until the semester ended. Noah resented it, even though he knew she was right. He paced the apartment at night, restless without work, guilt gnawing at him whenever Grace left for Brightline. Grace tried to reduce one cleaning shift, then panicked when the power bill came high and took it back. They fought differently now, with more truth and therefore more danger. "You promised you would stop hiding when you were hurting," Noah said one night after finding her soaking her swollen feet in a bucket at 1 a.m. "And you promised you wouldn't try to parent me like I'm your husband," she snapped, then covered her mouth because the sentence revealed more than she meant. They both had to learn language again. Grace had to learn that telling her son the amount of a bill was not the same as burdening him with. Noah had to learn that helping did not require bleeding in secret. Lily stopped flinching at every phone call, slowly. Ben began asking whether Noah would come back from college every weekend, and each time Noah said yes, Grace heard the lie of kindness and the truth beneath. Briggs came one more time, expecting the old fear. Grace opened the door with Noah behind her and a legal aid advocate on speakerphone. Her hands shook, but her voice did not. "You will speak through the office now. You will not come to my apartment again." Briggs smiled thinly. "Grace, be careful. Pride is expensive." Noah stepped forward, but Grace lifted one hand and stopped him. "So is fear. I've been paying that too long." Briggs left without raising his voice. That night, Grace took the old debt paper off the fridge and replaced it with a copy of Noah's scholarship letter. She did not do it as a happy ending. She did it as an act of resistance. The refrigerator still hummed. The rent was still due. Her back still hurt, but the paper on the fridge no longer belonged to a man who threatened her. It belonged to her son. The summer before Noah left, the apartment became a place of folded things. Folded shirts, folded towels, folded lists, folded feelings nobody knew where to put. Grace bought a used navy blazer from a thrift store for $8 and told Lily it was for some future nice occasion. She washed it by hand, hung it near the window, ironed it with careful attention to the cuffs, then placed it in the back of her closet. Noah packed for college in a duffel bag with one broken zipper. Grace wanted to buy him a suitcase. He said the duffel was fine. She hated the word fine, because in their family it had always meant no one had enough to ask for better. Lily drew a picture of Noah in a graduation cap standing on a stage, though college had not even begun. Ben tucked a toy car into Noah's bag, so you remember the way home. On the morning he left, the bus station smelled of wet pavement and diesel. Grace wore her work shoes because she had to go straight to Harbor Light afterward. Noah stood taller than she did, backpack on one shoulder, scholarship folder in his hand. For a moment she saw the first-grade boy again, fists in her coat. "You don't have to call every day," she said, though she wanted him to. "I'll call Sundays. Study first. I know, eat. I know, sleep," he smiled faintly. "You too." That nearly broke her. She hugged him hard, then let go before she begged him not to leave. Noah looked at her, eyes wet. "I'm not leaving like Dad." Grace flinched softly. He took her hand. "I'm leaving so coming back means something different." The bus pulled away. Grace stood until it turned the corner. Then she walked to work with the scholarship letter folded in her bag like something holy and terrible. Proof that a door had opened, because both of them had nearly broken themselves against. Years passed, but not like a montage. They passed like work. Noah's first semester nearly swallowed him. He called home sounding bright, until Grace learned to hear the exhaustion under brightness. He sat in lecture halls beside students who complained about dining hall food, while he calculated whether his stipend could cover a bus ticket home for Thanksgiving. He worked in the campus library, joined a first-generation student group, nearly failed chemistry, recovered, wrote papers at 3 a.m., and once called Grace from a stairwell saying, "I don't think I belong here." Grace, who was on break behind Maggie's with rain dripping from the awning, closed her eyes. Old Grace would have said, "You have to belong because I suffered for this." New Grace said, "Maybe belonging is something you build after you arrive." Noah was silent. Then he said, "I'm tired," she answered. "Then tonight be tired. Tomorrow decide again." She learned that from pain, not wisdom. Grace eventually left Brightline after Mrs. Whitcomb connected her with a patient care assistant training program. She was not young. She was not rested. She studied medical terminology on buses, failed the first practice test, passed the second, and cried in the bathroom at Harbor Light when she received her certificate. Lily grew into a serious girl who kept lists and hated debt with a private fury. Ben stopped asking if men at the door would take the apartment, though loud knocks still made him pause. Victor sent a message, once asking to see the kid. Noah read it, deleted it, then told Grace because secrets no longer had permission to live in the house. "Do you want to see him?" she asked. Noah looked out the window. "Not yet." It was the most honest answer anyone in that family had given about Victor in years. Noah graduated on a bright May afternoon that seemed almost insulting in its beauty. The university auditorium had high ceilings, polished floors, banners in deep blue and gold, rows of families holding flowers, balloons, phones, programs, and all the visible evidence of being proud without being afraid of the cost. Grace arrived early with Lily and Ben, because late was still something poverty had trained her to fear. She wore the navy blazer from the thrift store, the one she had kept in the closet for 4 years. Cleaned and pressed so carefully, it looked almost new unless one noticed the worn spot near the cuff. Her blouse was old. Her shoes were the same pair Noah had repaired years before, polished until the cracks looked like lines in a loved face. She carried a small bouquet from the grocery store, carnations because roses were too much. She chose seats near the back out of habit. Lily, now 13, touched her arm. "Mom, we can sit closer." Grace shook her head. "This is fine." Ben, 10 and suddenly long-limbed, leaned over. "You always say that when it isn't." Grace looked at him, startled, then laughed softly because children eventually returned your own words sharpened. Still, she stayed in the back. Some habits were not humility. Some were old instructions carved too deep. The ceremony began. Names were called. Families cheered. Grace watched every student cross the stage and thought of all the mothers she could not see in their gowns, all the night shifts hidden under diplomas, all the fathers absent, all the children who had carried more than backpacks. When the dean announced, "Noah James Carter, summa cum laude," Grace stood so quickly the program slid from her lap. Lily was crying already. Ben shouted, "That's my brother." Noah stepped into the aisle in cap and gown. He looked older, steadier, but when he turned his head and found Grace in the back row, his face changed. The practiced composure fell away, and for one suspended moment he was 17 again in Mrs. Whitcomb's office, holding a white envelope with trembling hands. The marshal gestured toward the stage. Noah took 2 steps forward, then stopped. A ripple passed through the rows. He turned away from the stage and walked down the aisle toward the back. Grace shook her head, panic rising. "Noah," she whispered when he reached her, "you have to go up there." He bent and hugged her before she could stand fully. The auditorium murmured, then quieted. His arms around her were strong now, but Grace felt the boy in them, the child, the worker, the student, the son who had grown too early and survived anyway. "I'll go," he said, voice thick enough that the people nearby heard. "But not before this. Baby, everyone's waiting." He pulled back just enough to look at her. "They can wait." Then louder, not performing, not polished, just telling the truth because he had learned what silence cost, he said, "This degree doesn't only have my name on it. It has both our names." Grace broke. Not prettily, not like in movies where tears shine and faces remain composed. She folded into him, one hand gripping the back of his gown, the bouquet crushed between them. Around them, the applause began in scattered pockets, then rose, not because everyone knew the story, but because everyone understood enough. Noah returned to the stage and received his diploma. Grace stood in the back row with Lily's arm around her and Ben leaning into her side, the navy blazer bright under the auditorium lights, the old shoes planted on polished floor. People later said it was beautiful. Grace let them. Beauty was easier to carry than the whole truth. The whole truth was that a diploma did not refund childhood. It did not erase the nights Noah worked until his wrists ached, or the mornings Grace accused him because fear had made her cruel. It did not unmake Victor, or Briggs, or the years Lily learned to listen for danger in adult voices, or the way Ben still saved the last bite of dessert for someone else because scarcity had entered him young. It did not give Grace back the body she had spent job by job, room by room, floor by floor. It did not make Noah's sacrifice harmless just because it ended in applause, but it meant the suffering had not been allowed to have the last word. Years later, when Grace looked at the diploma framed in Noah's office, she never saw paper first. She saw a kitchen before dawn, a repaired shoe, a boy folding towels under fluorescent light, a mother on a bathroom floor, a white envelope opened with shaking hands, a bus pulling away, a thrift store blazer waiting in the dark of a closet, and a son walking away from the stage because there was one person in the back row he refused to leave unnamed. Some families survive by saying, "I love you." Carters had survived by working, hiding, breaking, returning, and finally learning to speak before silence turned love into another wound. And if the ending still hurt, if there was no clean rescue, no perfect restoration, no way to give everyone back what poverty had taken, then perhaps that was because real sacrifice does not disappear when it is honored. It stays. It changes shape. It becomes the weight in a mother's hands when she touches her son's diploma and whispers, not with relief, but with awe and grief together, "We made it," knowing that making it never meant they had come through untouched.